Well, good morning, everyone, once again. So what we're going to do here is sort of, like I said, or what was said, it's a bit of a discussion. And you know, the whole, I want to preface this by saying it's the chemists that started this discussion at a very engaging S4 community of practice meeting. I unfortunately missed it. But one of the things that came up in this S4 meeting was the new program and just what's different and what's new about it and what's exciting and what might be a challenge. And people started tearing their hair out, as I understood it. Maybe that's a bit of hyperbole, over what's changing in organic chemistry and how is this going to impact our university partners who expect students to come in with a full organic 1 course under their belt, or even organic 2. And as we sort of saw from JF's presentation, in order to make room for all of these other components, this computer science course and this stats course, which are going to be very valuable in the end, not just for us as Cégep teachers, but for you guys at university when you inherit these students. But what it means is some things have to go. And by and large, where some of that loss is in the option courses and what we could possibly offer our students to prepare them for, say, a biochemistry program or a biology or molecular biology program and whatnot. And that's just on that side of things, right? There's impacts also on the pure and applied side of things. So what we're going to do in this breakout session is basically look quickly at some of the maybe key differences between the old and the new program. And some of you may also have noticed things that maybe we haven't. And so, of course, feel free to share and do a little bit of a SWOT analysis. So let's look at the strengths and the weaknesses of this new program. What are the opportunities it may present at either front? And what are the threats? And the main threat I see, of course, is that transition piece from Cégep to university and making sure we all have our ducks in a row and that we know what we're producing, and then ultimately what the other end of this development in our students is going to expect, right? Particularly our university partners. And then let's just focus on some of those specific opportunities and challenges and discuss maybe, we're not going to solve anything today. What this is to prime a discussion. And then maybe we could even go so far as the session goes to maybe even brainstorm ideas for this capstone course, the Zero NTC course, where students are going to actually do some form of integrated project in the program. So I'll just flip over here to this slide. And let me just maybe blow this up. Let's do this as an actual slideshow. And again, this is sort of highlighting what JF had presented is that in the old program, we kind of had these competencies with some performance criteria, but it was all very vague, probably done so on purpose, and that the new courses are far more prescribed. What I would refer you guys to is the document that Carmen shared in the chat. Maybe take a quick flip through that. Take a look for yourselves at what the program looks like specifically at those chemistry competencies, and then maybe we'll bring it back in a couple minutes and then start talking a little bit about what we're seeing in that document, again, as strengths and opportunities and weaknesses. I see some comments in the chat. Krista, you're right, that by and large, a lot of the thermochemistry, if not all of it, has completely disappeared from our courses.
Yeah, but was it supposed to be there in thermochemistry? I thought that the thermochemistry was not supposed to be part of the, it's been taught, but I mean, it was not part of the curriculum, even in the previous program.
No, it wasn't officially. And every college had its own local flavor, I believe, of how they really tackled that. Certainly we did at John Abbott, a little bit different from the other Anglo colleges in the Montreal area. But now it is completely gone. And one of the things that's sort of been stressed in meetings I've had with the Comité de Conseil, and I really only got involved in it in August because that's when I started term as science program coordinator at John Abbott, is that as much as content is prescribed, it doesn't mean that you can't teach certain context. It's not that you can't teach additional stuff, but they're quite firm about where your evaluation has to lie. And the evaluation has to lie in the material that's prescribed in the program documentation.
So yeah, teach it, but not evaluate it.
Exactly.
And then the tyranny of coverage comes back.
And this is exactly it. That's exactly it, right? Krista, I want to address your other point. The concepts of atoms, isotopes, metals, nonmetals, and molecules. Will most of this be in high school? Yes, a lot of it is actually in the grade 10 course. But if we think of life as a student, it's a long time from grade 10 to U1. And how much of that, we can reinforce some of that, certainly. I mean, certainly we can reinforce, some of these concepts in the general chemistry course when we talk about atomic models and periodicity. But yeah, again, it
seems like a shame to me that we've lost so many hours in the general chemistry program, but still have to review high school chemistry. We could have done a little bit more interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree. One of my colleagues is reminding me, just so that we all get to know each other, because we may not all know each other, just to maybe we could just, when we want to speak, maybe raise a hand, I guess. We could do that, unless I call upon you, of course, and put you on the spot. And just, introduce yourself and what institution you're from. Okay, so Krista's noticed that there's there's no thermo, essentially.
So there's no thermodynamics or thermochemistry.
We may have to do dedicate more time to reviewing basic concepts about matter, which I think at the college level, many of us still do.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other things that people may have noticed that are different? And at McGill, Concordia, or whatever university you're from, recognize that you guys offer many of these same kind of courses, right? I guess at Concordia was 205, 206 way back when I was a student there. I don't know if it's still got the same numbers. And certainly there are analog courses at McGill as well. Yeah, go ahead, Krista.
Yeah, I've looked at this a lot over the past few weeks. And one thing I noticed was there's no titration curve analysis. It was in what was released at the end of the summer. Did we say that was the last one? And now it seems to be gone. Honestly, no love lost from me. But in organic as well, I can't figure out what type of focus they want to put on synthesis.
Yeah, definitely. We were discussing this, I think, a couple of days ago, Veronique, Carmen, and I, that there's absolutely no reference to titration curve anymore whatsoever. They're certainly retaining, looking at buffer solutions and weak acid and weak base ionization, but nothing explicit about covering titration curves anymore. I'm not an organic expert. I may defer to one of my organic colleagues who can maybe speak to your synthesis concern.
Yes, synthesis wasn't emphasized in the previous version, but it is now brought back, and it's actually one of the elements of competency where students have to be able to design a synthesis. Develop methods for the synthesis of simple organic compounds. So it is brought back, yeah, because that really is like the main goal of the course. Yes, Suzanne?
So Suzanne Black, chemistry, obviously, from John Abbott. I'm noticing the colligative properties are listing melting and boiling points. Osmotic pressure is something that's kind of important into the biology department. And when we cut it this semester because of time, they noticed, they made comments, we warned them. And so we may need to make it very clear to them that that's not in our list.
Yeah, in fact, osmotic pressure and vapor pressure, Raoult's law, have been specifically removed from the new, in the new course. It doesn't mean you can't still cover it, but yeah, it's specifically removed.
Yeah, go ahead, Krista.
Yeah, in that respect as well, I saw that a lot of the properties of materials was removed. Like there's no discussion of why metals are conductive or malleable. I didn't see anything about covalent network solids. It was just looking at the boiling point and melting points of materials in order to look at intermolecular forces. So that kind of got gutted.
Yeah, go ahead, Laurie.
Hi, Laurie from Marinopolis. There's no electrochemistry at all.
There is mention in the first competency 0C01, specifically as you go past the first page where it describes the elements of the competency. And this is what JF was talking about. There's additional details on the content. And if you scroll down there, you will actually see reference to balancing equations, including oxidation and reduction. So it's not that it's being completely removed, but one of the aspects maybe that we're not covering anymore are things like electrochemical cells, more specifically.
Exactly.
So there's like that, you know, the words coming to me in French and not in English. There's not enough of that like précision of the topic anymore. It's really just surface balancing redox reactions. And to what extent, I guess that becomes local flavor now, right? Because are you just looking at single displacement reactions? Are we looking at balancing things in acidic or basic solution? These are things that departments and colleges are going to have to discuss. And again, I'd love to hear from our university partners. To what extent do you want to see something like redox reactions covered? Is that something that's wholly important? Is it something that you end up reviewing because the students just don't know it well enough anyways? This is stuff that we at the college level would love to hear. I'm going to throw it to, I'll give it to Pallavi as a first-time speaker, then Suzanne, then Krista. So go ahead, Pallavi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pallavi Surju Singh. I'm from McGill, and I teach the Gen Chem courses, and once in the summer, usually in last fall and winter, I've been teaching organic as well. And I also do analytical chemistry in the fall semester. But I think my one main sort of thing was that thermodynamics is, okay, so electrochemistry, I guess I'll start there. So I think it's okay, like at least, so in the Gen Chem 120, which is the course in the winter, we go over organic chemistry and pretty basic concepts as well. So I feel like if that is not covered in detail, if just, you know, redox reaction, just a very basic sort of balancing of equation or just giving oxidation numbers is covered, that's sufficient because it's covered right now in general chemistry, and students who are interested in more of this, it's covered again in pretty deep detail in an analytical course, which is a second, you know, U1 course or which second year course. So I think there, you know, there's a lot of, and usually when I'm looking at course equivalency, electrochemistry is one topic. If it's not covered, we would still provide equivalency to Gen Chem courses. But I think the one big shocker for me is thermodynamics, because I feel like that's, I don't know, maybe Laura, you'll also add to this, because I don't, that I feel like is the basis of a lot of concepts, and, you know, understanding spontaneity, understanding, you know, just even equilibrium, like the basic principles of it. It seems like that's a pretty big topic to be missing, in my opinion. So yeah, so I think those were two of my major comments, but I don't have such a quick sort of, you know, like I can't very quickly say, oh yeah, this is what is missing from previous years, because each CEGEP also had very different content that they covered, at least from what I remember, at least reviewing course equivalencies. So it's, you know, it's a little difficult for me to just say that. So yeah, so I think that's one. And then the other thing that I noticed was that, and I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right thing. It looks like it might be new, but electrophilic aromatic additions seem to be being asked to be covered, which is good. That's something that we look for in organic chemistry for equivalency. So OrChem 1. So yeah, so that's my only other comment. But I think for organic, any questions should be directed to Laura, who's our organic chem person.
Can I just throw it to Laura, since she's being named? Maybe I'm following Robert's rules here. Maybe I'm getting too used to this. But go ahead, Laura, and
Sorry,
then.
can I just
go
make a
ahead.
quick? Oh, Sorry,
Yeah.
Laura, to interrupt. I just wanted to, I missed something here. Pallavi, what did you mention about redox is that it would be good if we just covered the basics because it'll be reviewed again in university in the first
Yes.
year. Okay. So the
For a
basics.
lot of years at McGill, we didn't cover electrochem and gen chem anyway, so I wouldn't stress too much about it.
Okay. And just to clarify, the competency about or the learning activity on aromatics. Let me just go back to my document here. The part about aromatics, it's that it wants us to. It's part of this here. Correct recognition of the reactivity of the main families of organic compounds. And so if I look at, item number 7, aromatic is covered, but I honestly don't think we would have enough time to cover electrophilic aromatic substitution. We've lost 20% of our contact time with our students. That's a lot of time lost. And there's so much to cover that I don't know that we can really cover that family of reactions.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we try to respect the speakers list as much as we can. I'm going to try to be as fair as I can. So I'll throw it to Laura, and then I have a couple of first-time speakers again. Suzanne, are you okay seating the spot there? I know you follow Robert's rules, so I have no worries from you. So then I'll throw it to Caroline, and then Régent, and then Suzanne. Go ahead, Laura.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Pavelka from McGill Chemistry. I predominantly teach organic chemistry right now. I have spent a lot of my years teaching Gen Chem in the past before Pallavi took that on, and I'm very appreciative to her for that. So I do know about both. I did say a little bit about electrochemistry. That's not a big major concern for, at least for McGill. The electrophilic aromatic substitution, we're going to have to work around because especially, I don't think Corinne O'Clair is here today, but she has been a major player with CEGEP relationships with McGill, especially for organic. And electrophilic aromatic substitution was her like benchmark for org-1 equivalency. And so if that goes away, we have either a big discussion within our chemistry department about what makes an equivalent course coming from CEGEP, or we have to think about making our course different to match, or having some sort of catch-up mode for those coming from CEGEP that want equivalency before coming to org-2. So that is going to have to be a bigger discussion beyond this workshop. The other thing I did want to touch on the thermodynamics argument a little bit too, because one of the topics that, or several of the topics that are still covered is, equilibria and acid bases. And I don't really know how you approach those really well without knowing about thermodynamics, especially because at McGill, and maybe Pallavi can correct me if I'm wrong, we do like to teach those from the approach of Gibbs energy and how it ties into the equilibrium constants. So that seems like a major hole from that perspective as well, not just from learning about thermodynamics in general. I know you can do acids bases totally without looking at thermodynamics, but it's kind of, again, a surface approach as opposed to a more in-depth view. And I thought that, I don't know, it just seems like a bit of a big compromise for solutions. That's all I have to say for now. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Laura. I'm getting word from my timekeeper. We've got about 15 minutes left in the breakout. Time flies, eh? And then we're going to go to a short break thereafter. So I do want to maybe get to some of the other discussion with the, maybe we're addressing it right now, the SWOT analysis, but let's just move forward, and then we'll kind of close the discussion here, what we see as differences. So Caroline, Régent, and Suzanne.
It was just to say that not all CEGEPs were covering thermodynamics. We never did. So, and I know that you received our students at McGill, but they never learned that. It was never part of the chemistry of solution at our CEGEP. And the other thing about the electrophilic aromatic substitution, and also, for instance, the osmotic pressure, it's not the same, right? But even if we are not covering it maybe as deeply as it was before, maybe we can still for example, for the osmotic pressure, if we want to have a concept that can be translated into another discipline in biology, maybe we don't need all the equations, but only to understand the concept of osmotic pressure. And for that, we might want to talk with the biology teachers to align what they need from us, because actually it's not in the program anymore. So if we want to cover it, we should not cover it as much in depth as we did before when it was in the program. But if we feel that it's useful for biology, I think we should talk with the biology teachers. And as for the electrophilic aromatic substitution, I think it's quite easy to cover it just for the purpose of planning a synthesis. It could be done for that objective. So that's in the program, plan for synthesis, and we can use that that reaction for that reason, but not maybe as much as some institutions did cover it.
I guess it's my turn.
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button.
Okay, so Régent Foran from Vanier. Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, I think we'll have to consider maybe using the lab periods as some backup time or some ways to cover certain topics. So I'm thinking about, if we're talking about thermochemistry, would be pushing to keep the calorimetry lab running, even if it's not technically a topic anymore. But I mean, at some point we have to save the ministry from themselves and save the students and they need to learn some material. So I guess one way to go around these kind of problems is to use the lab session. Now, in terms of thermodynamics, I mean, yeah, we do cover acid bases and we do cover equilibrium without talking about thermodynamics. I think at the Cégep level, it's pretty sufficient. When we do cover thermodynamics, we come back to equilibrium and we mention here and there and Gibbs and so on and so forth, and we link the two topics. But I guess thermodynamics could be watered down. The thing is, I was surprised to see that was thinking that, especially for those going in pure and applied in engineering, that thermodynamics would be a very important topic. But then again, as for the example with the osmotic pressure, I mean, it's sad in the sense that that would be a nice interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary topic. Now the question is that, yeah, we mention it, and then in biology with all those extra hours, they can cover it in more depth. That is, again, is something to be discussed. But anyway, I guess my point was about thinking about using the lab sessions or certain experiments to maybe cover some topics that we don't have time anymore during the lecture time. Thank you.
Thank you, Régent. Suzanne, I'll give you the last word for this part.
All right, thank you. I'm going to say that we really have to work on that interdisciplinary, and maybe not so much interdisciplinary as at least looking at what biology wants, needs, uses. I was thinking particular with the redox, they do a whole lot of cycles that involve redox. And sometimes the students don't know it's the same redox that we were teaching in chemistry. That certainly needs to be increased. But I don't want to teach redox if all I'm doing is saying, here's one example, next. It doesn't make sense to teach things at a superficial level. I think it's one of the things we talked about earlier, or had been mentioned earlier. So if we're not going to do cells, if we're not going to do certain things, we really need to look and see why we would teach redox. And I think the reason we would teach it, at least in health science, is for biology. So what examples would we do? We really need to look at that cross-cultural sort of, where are we going to use this? How are we going to work with it? And not stick in our silos. And that may be true for many of our other topics. How is it going to be used? How are we going to wrap this back around? Where is our final project going to be? You know, maybe all of our interdisciplinary final integrated projects are on, I don't know, respiration, and use the biology and the chemistry. Maybe that's what we need to think, is putting that stuff into those last classes where there's still learning to be done as opposed to just demonstrating having learned. My last 2 cents. Thanks.
Thanks, Suzanne. And I think Suzanne raises some very valuable points there about there are still other courses that are in the program that could involve chemistry. There is room for a 60-hour option course. One of those, the Organic 1 course is highly prescribed, but it doesn't mean we can't offer other courses in chemistry. There's also the integrated project, which and I'll be talking a little bit more about that after the break. But by and large, the integrated project is also meant to be multidisciplinary. And so maybe planting those seeds early about interdisciplinary or having those crosstalks with our peers, at least at the college level, about some of those interdisciplinary considerations will go a long way in making sure our students, when they graduate from Cégep, that they are prepared to then platform into whatever specialty they want to look at in a university. And of course, I think in there too is making sure we also have talks with people like Laura and Pallavi and our other university partners to make sure we are getting them ready in the right way too, right? And it just can't be about content either. It's about what, if we're going to bring in the content, we're going to look at it at some depth and not just say check off a box that, oh, we talked about it in this lecture back in fall of first semester. Carmen, you maybe want to switch slides here. Laura, that's a good question. Is there a list of Cégeps that were previously offering Org 2? I don't want to drone on about this too much, but I think a lot of the Anglo Cégeps were offering Org 2 because of, again, sort of this relationship we've had with our university partners, that students were given credit for Org 1 and Org 2 at university. What we've seen with the changes to Med-P admissions standards, like that they don't need Organic 2, at least at Abbott, we haven't run Org 2, not for lack of want, but for lack of students, because they just didn't care anymore. It's not a hoop I have to jump through anymore. And so demand for that course at John Abbott was so low, it was less than 10 people, that we couldn't run it, we couldn't fund it. And so I suspect, and I could see Gregor talking about it here at Concordia, I rarely see students having taken Org 2 in Cégep. Yeah, because they're dodging it now. They're dodging it entirely. Because if they feel it's going to hurt their R score or their chances of admissions, they just don't take it. In fact, a lot of students will strategically defer Org 1 until their last semester of their 2-year program for exactly that reason. It won't show up in my admissions data that gets sent off to university. Yeah, Dawson probably still fills Org 2. I imagine with the large student population, you guys have the space to do that. Caroline, in the French, at least at André Laurando, do you guys offer any Org 2? No way.
No, we don't. And I really don't know any Francophone Cégep who does, but probably there is, but I'm really not aware. And most of the Cégep don't teach Organic 2. And as you said, the thing with the equivalency or the from recognition from university, I asked, and we don't offer that for the Francophone university. We don't have that partnership, so neither our Org 1 or eventual Org 2 would be recognized by university. It's not part of that partnership.
Yeah, it's something a lot of us learned at the S4 community in talking with Caroline, was that we were talking about this concern about Org 1 and equivalency, and I remember Caroline in another discussion with me being confused, like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you get credit? So that seems to be a purely Anglo sector thing that we've negotiated over the years, and we're going to have to renegotiate or revisit that very closely. Laura, I know, has expressed, I think it was Laura, I'm trying to remember what I saw in the recording of that S4 session that I missed, but basically, concerns from the universities of how are they going to ensure they have enough sections of this course to meet the needs of the students coming out of Cégep if they don't have the same type of preparation in Organic. So I think we've actually talked a lot about some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses. Maybe we haven't talked too much about the opportunities, though. Having heard what we have discussed so far this morning, in maybe the next 7 minutes, where do we see some strengths of this new program? What are maybe some, I think we've identified some of the weaknesses. There's definitely going to be some content that will be missing from our students, content knowledge. But what might there be in terms of opportunities for our students, and opportunities maybe for our university partners in receiving some of these quote new students? Yeah, I think Caroline's hand was up first, and Régent.
Maybe I'm just a bit too optimistic, but I think just having the time to take the time of having that type of discussion that we have this morning, we would not have taken the time if not for a new program. And not only this discussion, but all the discussions around the science program that are going on in all CEGEPs, and everyone is involved and everyone is thinking about the same things and trying to do best. And I think just that, it's already a good opportunity. It's having, you know, the time to talk and the opportunity to talk. And the other thing is, while doing that, I think we will try to do better than we did previously with the labs. And that will be what Sean will be presenting after the break, because I think there is an opportunity here to rethink our lab curriculum. And that opportunity would not exist if not for a new program where everything is on the table. So for that, I think that's an opportunity.
Thanks, Caroline. Go ahead, Régent.
Well, Caroline is optimistic. I'll be on the other side of the coin. It seems to me with the loss of several hours, it seems that we're going in the wrong direction, and keeping in the use of the chemistry being the central science. It's kind of still strange that the central science got cut so much. And while we're trying to make interdisciplinary connections and more. Now the good side in terms of the program is it's pushing with that interdisciplinary aspect, which of course was not covered, or we're really going in silos before. So that would be the advantage. But I'm really concerned because of those several hours. I mean, it seems that the program has been pushed towards a health field. And I mean, in the sense that more and more bio hours is, it may be not so bad, but in the sense that cutting off with that PCA and that programming, again, I would think that the programming could have been covered somehow during the other covered during chemistry, physics, bio, math, and so on and so forth. But again, well, now we're stuck with that program. But yeah, I'm really concerned in terms of the hours. But yeah, the positive aspect is interdisciplinary.
Thank you, Régent. I'll add my 2 cents. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I'm excited about that problem stats course. I think it's an awesome opportunity for our students to have a better foundation in how to maybe look at data and to be critical about it, and how to draw conclusions from data, looking at different ways of analyzing data. Because I think data is key to science. How do you know you've done a good job? Well, you got to ask yourself these kinds of questions. You know, I often used to look at the social science program and how much they did in research methods and quantitative methods, and then they had this integrated course. And I think of my own training in science as a Cégep product and how I lacked a lot of that. And then it kind of got tacked on here and there in an analytical course. You know, all of a sudden I was introduced to t-tests and q-tests and far more rigor when it came to things like significant figures. Maybe it was timely introduction of those concepts. But in my mind, you know, having rigor in one's approach to analyzing data, I think that's universal. That's interdisciplinary in itself. It's a core of science. I think too that the capstone course is going to be a really interesting opportunity for getting our students to start addressing some of the shortcomings of the current program, or at least what we're producing as students. And it's sort of that lack of critical thinking that the universities have identified, the inability of students to progress forward with, you know, just making decisions. And you'll hear about me maybe say this during my end of the presentation, but I remember the transition to graduate studies being extremely tough for me, just because all of a sudden there were no right answers anymore, and everything was muddy, and that's real science. And I don't think in the CEGEP program we have exposed our students enough to that, or given them opportunities to do that enough. And then when they go into their bachelor's, you know, they're left for want, and teachers are kind of stuck trying to plug those gaps, and maybe it's not enough in a 3-year bachelor's to plug some of those holes. So I see these as opportunities. Is there anyone else? We've got a minute left, and then we'll close the discussion. I think this was very good. I see Gregor concurring. Yes, I figured the analytical chemists would be excited about the stats and the programming. Yeah, and then again, the Krista's kind of got here in the chat some of the components and stuff that we mentioned earlier. And Suzanne, yes, there might be some threats to jobs. Certainly that'll be a local, well, a college system-wide issue. But maybe there's ways that locally we can find ways to mitigate some of that. You know, one of the things is that it's the obligatory hours that have changed, but we still have that wiggle room with the option courses and this integrated project. Someone's going to have to teach the integrated project. You know, so maybe that's where locally we can mitigate some of that. All right.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead,
Sean.
Carmen.
I'm just really curious, just because we have university faculty here. Carrie Rogers is from Concordia, and she joined us partway. And then we've got Laura and Pallavi. I just want to ask if students don't have don't get the equivalency, are the two institutions able to handle all the students who have to take Organic 1 coming out of CEGEP? Is that, you know, a challenge on your end?
I have no idea. We'll have to look at what the numbers are for what I was getting equivalent. Right now, I don't know what those numbers are offhand. In terms of lecture, fine. It's the lab space.
Okay. Because I think that's important to know, right? Because if lab space is not an issue, then maybe this is where we kind of part ways, and CEGEPs take this opportunity to kind of bring down the organic chemistry and, you know, just make it, you know, spend more time on the basics and giving them that solid foundation that they need, you know, to be able to move on to the university levels. Or if space is an issue, then we will, you know, it would be really helpful to have the continued dialogue so that we could try to find a way to you know, make things work and give the students equivalency. Maybe design a course at McGill or at Concordia where it's kind of a continuation of what CEGEP students have learned. So it's a course that's specific for CEGEP students.
One question I do have about the French, I know not a lot of people from the French CEGEP, but maybe Carolyn can speak to it, is I know a lot of the French universities, like, they don't give organic equivalency. That came up a little bit earlier, and that's something that's, you know, that's the way it is for as long as I know. Do the students not get upset about that? Or like, how do they feel about taking organic and CEGEP and then having to take it again at UDM or Polytechnic or wherever they're going? Because it's something that we keep because of the student backlash, I think, more than anything.
Go ahead, Carolyn, I'll give you the last word.
I think the students don't know that if they were to go at McGill, they would have one course less to do, but actually they don't have to do one course less. They have to take another course, but still do the 90 credits or 96 credits. So it's just one course for another. And I know that our students, they come back and they say, well, I think I was better prepared than maybe some other students who did organic at another CEGEP. And I was really happy with that, because in my org chemistry at university, I felt I was better prepared, but I don't think that. And let's conclude that with a reference to educational research, right? Jérôme Brunner explained that with a great concept that is the curriculum, spiral curriculum, where students see the same thing at different time, and every time they relearn it because they have forgotten it, every time they revisit it, they integrate it better. So I think I would not like my students to have that course credited at university, because I feel if they revisit it, they will understand better organic chemistry. So, but no, we don't have the backlash because I think the students don't know.
Okay.
All right, guys, thank you very much for everything you shared. We're going to take like maybe a 6-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:40 in the regular session. Okay.